Some of us are outwardly successful, but inwardly feel unhappy and living a life lacking in purpose and meaning. The Necktie and the Jaguar by Carl Greer can help you discover what's important to you and how to go for it. For more information or to purchase the book, visit carlgreer.com. That's CarlGreer.com.
My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. The growing connection between science and spirituality establishes that the subtle energy responsible for all of creation may be directed with intention for healing, prosperity, and peace. Returning to Destination Unlimited this week, my dear friend Cyndi Dale explains how everyone may embrace these truths and use her 4-pathway system to achieve all of this and more. Cyndi Dale is an internationally renowned best-selling author of more than a dozen books on intuition and healing. She's president of Life Systems Services, through which she has conducted more than 65,000 client sessions and presented training classes throughout Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Her website is cindydale.com, and she joins me this week to share her new book, Advanced Chakra Healing, 4 Pathways to Energetic Wellness and Transformation. Please join me in welcoming back to Destination Unlimited my friend Cyndi Dale. Welcome back, Cyndi.
Hi, Victor. I am thrilled to be here and to see what kind of journey we're going to take today.
Absolutely. And for those meeting you for the first time, please share your early life and path and how you discovered your sensitivity to subtle energy and your intuitive abilities.
Well, I thought I was normal. I thought that it was a not unusual thing to be able to talk to spirits and see colors around people and kind of watch the fairies as they, fluttered from, kind of flower to flower along with the bees. And, it took me a few years and constant feedback from my parents who inferred that there was something not quite normal for me to figure out that, even though we all have these abilities, maybe not everybody is exercising them. And so I really did rely on those sort of extrasensory sight, hearing, feeling, perceptions until I was about 12 or 13. And I just wanted to be out of here. I got sent back and I shut down my gifts. But, Victor, they started opening up again when I started therapy when I was about 20. And I've really been on this great adventure ever since to kind of keep analyzing my own abilities and look into this beautiful supernatural realm that is more of reality than the physical. And I help people to do the same.
You share a very important point because we share a common experience, as do many who are born open and sensitive and seeing and experiencing things very normally. We don't think that there's anything different about us. But then we tell our parents about it, and they kind of have a tendency to say it's your imagination or overactive imagination, and they tend to shut their children down. What advice would you give to parents for kids who are showing these gifts and abilities?
Listen, ask questions. Let them expand on what they're hearing and seeing, and sometimes these sorts of, kind of knock on wood abilities are really scary for children. And so it's important to do your own research, how you can help them develop boundaries, how you can help them decide that they can turn it all off when they go to bed and not have to go there. And, but the more normal you make this for yourself, the same for your children. It reminds me of, I forgot all about this event several years ago. My youngest son was maybe 9 or 10 or something, and he had the neighbor boy over, and all of a sudden, all of these plants and lamps started falling over. in the in the living room. The dogs were not in the living room because that could have been one of the more natural causes, but literally they just kept falling over. And Gabe looked at me and he said, Mom, what's happening? And I said, well, I think that's God because I was asking for a sign. And Gabe goes, oh, okay. The little boy goes, this doesn't happen at my house. I forgot all about that. And until we started talking about how to make the supernatural natural. You don't have to go crazy with it, right? Kids don't have to talk about it at school, but they do have to understand that most of who we are is spirit. And so get in the flow of your spirit very early, and you'll always, kind of have that extrasensory way to deal with reality.
And you shared the B word, which is so important for people who are sensitive and empathic, boundaries. It takes a long time to really understand that, doesn't it?
It has taken forever. And I still have clients. I remember not long ago teaching a class, and afterwards, one of my clients said, so do you really not care if there's just spirits in your house? I'm like, what do I care? I don't notice them. I don't interact with them, unless they come from the divine, they just do their thing and I do my thing. And if they bother me, then they got to go. But, we don't have to put up with stuff, and neither do we have to constantly tune in to the supernatural world either.
And I'm talking about boundaries with other human beings also.
Well, that's the big one, because right, I think the invisibles are often nicer. Especially when you tune in and you make that boundary decision. I'm only going to interact with the spirit allies that, I'm on their side and they're on mine. You got to have boundaries. Yeah. And I don't know about for you, Victor, in your life, but I'm still working on that. I'm constantly, kind of learning. I can say no. Even this year, I ended 3 friendships. It was pretty obvious that I needed to, and I felt really sad. And I felt, kind of those old feelings of, is this the right thing to do? And now will I have any other, friends that, want to get rid of me? All those really little inner child voices. And my life has felt so much more free because they really were, rather extraordinarily, not nice to me. So why it took me so long? Hello, I'm still working on it too.
And it took me a long time. I'll be 69 in January. It took me a long time to learn that no is a complete sentence.
I know. I tell myself that constantly. And, some of those shorter sentences are really our best friends. Yes is a good, short sentence too. The shortest Bible verse in the New Testament is Jesus wept. Yeah. So we get to have our feelings also.
Absolutely. You share a fascinating story about how your life purpose clarified for you in a dream you had while traveling in Morocco. What happened?
Well, this trip was really kind of beyond the pale in that before I went on it with 3 friends, actually, I hate to admit this, but I didn't even know where Morocco was. I had a friend ask me, where are we supposed to travel? And the voice in my head, that's not my voice, came into my head and said, Morocco. And we both said, where's Morocco? I mean, we kind of vaguely knew it was over there, kind of on the African continent, but not exactly where. So I tuned in and I asked, what's the purpose of going? And the voice that I trust said, to be as if you've never been. Well, talk about a setup for an amazing trip. And so we landed in Casablanca, the 4 of us. Our clothes did not. They went to Amsterdam. And so there's 4 of us, including one man, all sleeping in the Sheraton beyond our budget at the time, kind of one room with, I think his backpack came. So we're wearing Pete's clothes. And we have Pete's hairdryer because it's very, very cold there. So it's the only way we could warm up. And so I had a series of dreams when I was there. The one about my purpose, I can still be in it. I'm walking the desert, the Sahara, the dunes, and a man comes up to me and he says, thank you. And I'm sort of clueless, as I often am. And I said, for what? And he goes, look at what you did. And I look in the Sahara, and there's all these kind of like low rise buildings, like those very inexpensive office buildings. They're one story, kind of tall. And I said, well, what am I looking at? He goes, you helped start all those. And I continue in the dream to my business, which was the smallest, kind of pencil thin, almost offices in this great big complex. And I go in there, kind of surprised to find out what I'm going to find. And I don't know if you've ever been to those kind of diners that just have single seating. They have like maybe 8 stools. Mm-hmm. So that's my business. It has 8 stools, and people sit there, and one glass case with eyeglasses in it. So I must know what I'm doing because I keep, operating in the dream. I go behind, this like eyeglass kind of place, and people start lining up, and they come in one at a time. And I just take the eyeglasses, help put them on their nose. They look in a mirror that's somewhere, right? It's a dream. So those things just kind of appear. And I say, so now can you see yourself the way God sees you? Mm. Isn't that beautiful? That's it. That's all I do. And I write these big, long, complicated books, which sometimes make me laugh, to be really honest, because it's really all very simple. It's like, how does God see us? And can we see ourselves that same way? And can we see the world through those lenses? Because I think we'd see people really differently than we tend to. We still have boundaries. Victor, we already talked about the need for boundaries, no's and yeses, and a few maybes sprinkled in there. But wouldn't this world be a beautiful place if that was really what we were all about?
Absolutely. How did your healing path unfold?
It really began quite self-oriented in terms of when I was about 19, 20, I started therapy for a long list of issues: codependency, OCD, anorexia, bulimia. I don't know. I think we all have our lists, right? Then we just, kind of move the words around. And somewhere in there, the therapist said to me, I don't think you're only these things. I think you're psychic. And I wanted to know what that meant. I was fortunate in that I was able to take a class that was the precursor to healing touch. I learned about chakras and figured out that's what I had been seeing, chakras in auric fields, when I was a kid. I began to travel to other countries with my then boyfriend husband, and studied with shamans, and really spent a couple decades pursuing the learning of what I eventually can call energy, spirits, healing, this and that. And it became very natural to begin my own practice. In fact, I was told to start my own practice by a voice when I was about 28. And so I did, and and I was off and running. So I think my guidance is always a few steps ahead of me. I don't know if you relate to this. I'm sure other people do, that I've kind of become a companion of fear. I don't mean bad fear, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be squished by a train, or I'm just going to be embarrassed if I say what I really feel like saying, which I still get a little bit like that. But the kind of fear that where you're stretched, where you know that there's another step that you have to take and you're told to do it, or it's clear to do it. And then there's that sense of uncertainty and uncomfortableness, kind of going into the next phase. So I think spirit keeps us on our toes. And I became a healer really to learn more about myself, but to help other people learn all about the natural and instinctive gifts that they have as well.
You've shared the word voice, hearing that special inner voice a few times, and that's something that I totally resonate with, having the same experience in my life many, many times. Let's just talk about that voice. How do people know the difference between the voice that's giving them guidance and loving advice versus the ego voice?
Well, I'd love to hear what you have to say after I share as well. I have learned about that voice because it feels different and sounds different than my head voice. Okay. It's still usually in my head. However, the voice, which I would call God, people could call the universe, whatever it is, it has a different resonance than Cyndi Dale's voice, which is, I don't think I want to do that, or I want to do this to get famous, or, right? Sometimes Cyndi Dale's voice, has good intentions, but it doesn't mean that that voice is accurate either. So that greater voice resonates. It goes all the way through my body. In my particular case, I often hear it coming in through my right ear. Now, go figure. I don't know why. The voice doesn't give long explanations. It's sort of short and to the point, very loving. It's never negative, and it's not always going to tell me why, because I've learned that about my intuition. Follow it because it is accurate. You don't know the hows, you don't know the outcomes, and you don't know, other things about it. Sometimes I get images instead of a voice. 20 years ago, I had a dream. I get a lot in my dream state, like literally, when I'm woken up in the night, or when I first wake up in the morning, or when I'm drifting, or the dog is barking, or the kids were, when they were younger, crying or whatever. It's that in between twilight kind of a feeling. And I get a lot of visions during that time too. 20 years ago, I had an image that I was going to write a bunch of little chakra books, and they were all going to get gathered together. Now, nobody's asked me to do it. Nobody's wanted me to do it until this year, 20 years later.
Yeah.
So I get dreams for my youngest child in particular. And he's learned also that when I get them, he'll say, "Mom, can you get me a dream?" And I'll just open up to one. It doesn't make life easier. Sometimes these visions and the voice are more markers to share, hey, you're on path, so keep going. How about you? I mean, some people call you the voice because you've got such a beautiful, resonant voice. You could show up and you could be the voice, of God in my dream. That would be fine with me.
Well, thank you. I this voice, I use it for the podcast, and I've used it for broadcasting, but I use it for teaching and for healing most of all, and that's what I use this voice for, and I'm grateful that I have it. But to address your question, everything you said, and I'll add the following. To me, the ego voice is the voice that shouts. If you hear it shouting at you, that's not spirit. That's not God. That's not the divine message. That's not the essence of source giving you sound and loving advice. That's the ego. So I disregard the shouting voice, and I don't hear it that much anymore because I do disregard it. The only time that voice ever raised, the true voice ever raised its voice to me was about, I'm guessing about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe a little longer. We were driving on a local highway, my wife and my son and myself. And I was in the left lane. It was a speed limit, 55, and there was a lot of traffic, but traffic was moving smoothly. And the voice said, "Get out of this lane now." And I didn't react fast enough, and it said, "Now." So I immediately got out of that lane, went into the center lane. And within 5 seconds, there was a multiple car accident in the left lane. Had I not listened, I would have been right in the middle of that accident. So that's how I differentiate between the true voice and between the ego voice. Generally speaking, the beautiful voice, the true voice, the spiritual voice, the divine voice is soft and encouraging and gives you positive advice.
It is positive. And like you're also implying, it can be authoritative also. Right. I've had that happen every so often too. Like, don't do this, go here, stop. And I feel comforted even in the middle of receiving that kind of a marching order because I know I'm being looked out after also.
Absolutely. Please tell us about your company, Life Systems Services.
Well, I am the company. I think a lot of us relate to being the janitor and right, the chef and when we used to in the old days send out mailings by hand, that person and everything else. I actually do have a wonderful company, and there are other people, kind of who I bring in to assist me. So I'm quite busy. I do client work and book way, way, way out. So I'm very fortunate about that. I teach classes within my company, and I've taught through colleges before. And now I'm doing a lot of teaching through Shift Network. I put my books up there and product. And, I have a business manager. Thank goodness there's somebody managing the store besides me, right? And he sort of tends to, kind of everything behind the scenes and an assistant. So, I really believe in having a team. And I know a lot of people who don't, kind of have their own businesses and don't have money for that. Get your friends to help. Look for ways that you can bring people in, because I'm really fortunate. I'm at the level that I can, kind of rely on other people. But it's basically, all about, kind of helping people find out what their essential selves are. And all the products are oriented toward that.
And we can have both human assistance and divine assistance.
Well, I'm so glad you said that. Years ago, I read a book, Nathaniel Hill. You may know it, Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. And I have applied one of his pieces of advice ever since. So this was probably 20, 30 years that I read that book. I don't know when it came out, but it was a really long time ago. And he said, put together a board of directors. And this is not human members for your board of directors. These are those who you want from history or the ethers, who you would like to assist you. And so I, every month or so, have a meeting with my invisible board of directors. And ever since I've done, and I'm even going through that right now, I'm making some changes in my company. And I just started feeling about 2 months ago, there was a way I needed to push out. And I sat down, and it's not like I heard all their voices talk to me at once, but I said, I need some signs. I need to know kind of what to push, what not to, where to go, where not to. And, things in my everyday life and, just started happening a little different, and people showed up as well. So we need to rely on those helpers. And sometimes that happens for me when I'm working with a client. I have one woman, I do not know why, but I have a dead lawyer show up every time we're going to work. Now, I would never charge legal rates or have her rely only on the dead lawyer's advice, right? For the divorce she's going through. However, I do quote this dead lawyer, and I'll say, if I were you, says the dead lawyer, you better go ask about this, because I don't think you're being represented in this area. I've had that kind of insight be given to me several times for people around business and legal. I never say, any more than I would be giving medical advice to people, do I give legal advice. However, more often than not, that advice that comes in through the dead panel that's sitting over on the other side tends to be very important and helpful.
And your board meetings give a whole new meaning to the word Zoom meetings.
Yes, they do. Well, you don't even need to be on Zoom. That's the cool thing.
That's it.
We could call them zip meetings.
That's
Everything
true.
comes in a zip file.
That's true. Absolutely. My guest is Cyndi Dale. Her brand new book, Advanced Chakra Healing, 4 Pathways to Energetic Wellness and Transformation. Cyndi, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you.
Just about anywhere. Now, it comes out in December of 21, which is really exciting. Now, let me tell you a secret about this 800-page book. It actually first came out as a 400-page book 15 or 16 years ago. And I wasn't looking to write that book, actually, 15 or 16 years ago. I was writing a sequel to my very first book, New Chakra Healing, which has since had its name changed. And I was, speeding along on this book. And I went to bed one night, and this voice of Christ said, that's not the book you're supposed to write. I go, well, that's the book I've almost finished. And he said, no, that one is not what you're supposed to write. You're supposed to write a book about 4 levels of reality. And then he showed me kind of this sort of 4-stage metaphor about these 4 stages of reality using my refrigerator of all things. And I woke up and I started to write that book. that book came out and it was killed actually. So shortly after the poor book, that publishing company went under. Random House bought the rights and killed the production. It came out and then they didn't print anymore. It became kind of an indie Speedway kind of a seller. Like it was selling on Amazon for $150.
Wow.
It became this sort of, kind of like cult book, like Rocky Horror Picture Show that didn't make like that big of a leap, right, to the big stage. And so when I got the rights back a few years ago, I'm like, I need to bring this book out again. I'd had dreams about the book, like it's got some really valuable information. Cyndi updated it. Llewellyn took it. I added a few hundred more pages and oh, well, and here it comes. Advanced Chakra Healing, kind of revised, revision 2.0, I should say.
Absolutely. From Llewellyn and your website.
Yes, on my website, and people can order it. And you know what's weird? I was sort of scared to bring it out again because it really is a little bizarre. This is just me speaking as a person, like 4 levels of reality and electrons and protons and neutrons. And it's sort of this really wild depiction of the universe. And people out there, at least from, they like it. Men's Journal just featured it in their top 20 books for 21.
Congratulations.
Now, 13th place. And I'm like, Men's Journal? Men? I'm like, they did say, now this book is a little strange, but aren't we in a strange time? And it's really helpful.
Absolutely.
So I think that things come forth when people are ready. I was ready 15 years ago, but now the world is ready for people to sit down and go, what happens if I really, really look at this world through different lenses? What might I be and become?
Absolutely. Give them your website and then we're going to go take a break.
CyndiDale.com, CYNDI-Dale.com.
And we'll be back with more of Cyndi after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Cyndi Dale. Her book, Advanced Chakra Healing, 4 Pathways to Energetic Wellness and Transformation. Tell us about these 4 pathways, the new healing paradigm, and how this manifested for you.
Well, it's like I said, I really do believe Christ said, okay, this is one way to see the universe that's going to be useful for people. And what he showed me is 4, think of like kind of a multidimensional chessboard. And there's 4 chessboards. They're stacked on top of each other. And chakras are sort of the elevators that go in between. And when you make a shift on one of these pathways, if you're in awareness that there's these other layers of your own being, as well as kind of the entirety of the universe, a shift on one pathway can bring about changes on the other pathways. So it's not pedantic. It's not like checkers where you got to move one step at a time. You can make one move on one particular pathway and boom, things start to move around on the others too. The most basic pathway, and none of them are better or worse than the others, I was told in my visioning, to call the elemental pathway. And it is really physical. It's not just physical, it's also emotional. It's about our belief systems. It's the everyday kind of classic science with a little bit of quantum thrown in. So on that elemental pathway, we're working with the subtle elements, fire, water, air that compose everything. We're working with our feelings. We're assessing our thoughts. We can operate with shapes and colors and all these beautiful, wonderful, kind of enjoyable ways that we appreciate ourselves and nature and the physical universe. So you look at food, and other types of really practical considerations if you're seeking to make changes on the elemental. The second pathway, which again kind of intersects with all the others, this one is really, it's beyond the pale. I call it the power pathway because it's like a barren space. Now we're on it. While we're talking, Victor, we're on these pathways. It's very barren except for the presence of forces and beams of energies and spirits that can help us with these beams of energy. So for one, some of the forces on this are, I call them polarity forces. They're generative and degenerative forces. To show the importance of this pathway, think about if you have a tumor in the elemental or the physical body. You're not going to get rid of that tumor if you have a generative force growing it and a degenerative force reducing the power of your immune system, right? You've got to switch the forces and these different kinds of beams of energy so that what's happening on the physical or elemental is really in accordance with what's the highest. Third pathway, this one is sort of, woo, it's the imaginal, it's the mystical pathway. This is the one that I think is best explained by quantum physics, that talks about many world theory, parallel realities. I think I just saw on Facebook, were you asking if people were getting dreams of alternative lives?
Absolutely. Just happened to me the last couple of weeks.
No, I know. I just saw that. I didn't even have time to reply because then we were going to talk. Right? Yep. That's the imaginal pathway. And I've been getting those dreams and different ideas, and even helping my youngest son who's going for baseball kind of get some perspective on, now you have different outcomes and which one do you really want and how do you land it? So that's kind of how we can work on that pathway. The divine pathway, though there is structure to it, is really all about our divinity. But it doesn't exclude our humanity, or if we're an animal, being an animal, or a tree being a tree, or a star being a star. It's where all of that intersects, and imperfection and perfection are really one and the same. And you operate here through prayer, petitioning, contemplation, meditation. It's not a religious pathway, it's a truth pathway. And there can still be challenges, even if you're oriented mainly toward this pathway. Let's say you do have a tumor. The question on this pathway would be, kind of not the same on the other ones. Like, what force is creating this? Or, kind of how am I, kind of creating this, which I don't believe we create all our problems. Okay, let me just say that. Or like, what are the thoughts that are sustaining this tumor? Rather, it would be, this tumor is meeting a need for me or maybe somebody else. Is there a different way to meet that need? And would it be appropriate to meet that need a different way? And then let's set about allowing the divine to shift what's happening. So it's a beautiful, beautiful pathway, an angelic pathway, but it's also very real and concrete, and not all our so-called problems disappear. It maybe we just have a better sense of what they're all about.
And as in any energy work or healing process, we always give the disclaimer, this is not to replace traditional Western medicine. This is to complement that.
Thank you. I am a big believer. All medicines are on the path. I mean, I personally get all my scans every year, when it's time to get my colonoscopy, and I do my, all the regular tests. I go to, medical physicians for what, they're able to provide me. And I tell my clients, to do the same. And, I'm not making this a political statement. I've been vaccinated, and I've had COVID, and I still took care of what I thought my body needed in order to, be safe and secure, because we're in physical bodies on the physical plane. So, I have a tragic story about that, actually, not about me, not about the vaccine, but years and years ago, I worked with a woman who called me maybe 20 years ago. She had a small lump in her breast. And I said, well, get it taken out. What do the doctors want you to do? She goes, well, they want to just remove it. I go, well, do that. And she didn't. She didn't. She called me back. And I didn't know that. She called me back about 5 years later, maybe 4 years later. Her child was, had just been born, and she had, tumors all over her body. And yeah, I hear this story all the time. And she said, I was scared to get the lump out because I thought the biopsy, and the method would spread the cancer. And there was nothing I could do for her. There was nothing at that point medical science could do for her. And so she left her little one and died. I hear those stories all the time. And as scary as they are, I like repeating them because I, like you, Victor, believe we need to take seriously the body form and what the body needs.
Absolutely. And to share your point, I'm, as I said, 68 going on 69. And since I have been following a path of both Western medicine, seeing my primary doctor 4 times a year, I see a cardiologist twice a year, I see the gastroenterologist once every 5 years, and every time, especially my primary, looks at me with a big smile on his face and says, you're great. I don't need to see you for another, I see him every 3 months because that's the way my calendar is set up. But he says, you're fine. Your blood pressure is wonderful. Your cholesterol is amazing for a man of your age and your background and everything else. And I hear these wonderful words. And so, yes, I use Western medicine and I also use energy medicine. So I don't exclude one for the other. And as my wonderful teacher used to say, never instead of, always in addition to.
Exactly. There's a great story. I read it in a book years ago about Gandhi, who did not like allopathic medicine until he got appendicitis. And he went to the British military. They knew him, and he, kind of had a good relationship with them. And he said, I would like you to schedule me for surgery. And this particular, I don't know if it was a general, a colonel, whatever, officer said, well, I didn't think you believed in allopathic medicine. And he said, well, since I have appendicitis, I've decided to believe in it.
Absolutely. That's amazing. God bless Gandhi. God bless Gandhi. I mean, learning a lesson at that stage of his life with everything else, all the profound wisdom he shared, I think that shows that we can all change no matter where we are in our status in life. So thank you for sharing that. As you touched upon a little earlier, science has moved in the past 10 to 15 years from being totally materialist to new discoveries about the energy that makes up everything and our ability to direct this energy with intention for healing and for balance. I know that I've shared recently with folks that in 2009, quantum physics discovered that the human body actually does produce photons, which are light particles. So when we used to sing, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, we were telling the truth. And that also explains why people who are sensitive to this can see the auras and see this energy field around people. What do these understandings mean in terms of the new paradigm?
It is so exciting. First of all, it means that the ancients were right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Nearly every culture, when they kind of formulated a medicine, whatever it is they would call it, the basis was really energy by whatever name they used, right? Mana, prana, this, that, and chi, ki, etc. And kind of the core of that energy was light and sound. So we're right back where we started. And science is astonishingly saying, yeah, but there's a lot of different kinds of light and a lot of different kinds of sound. And, some of the most basic kind of observable, knowledge that we've been given, are, ideas such as, or really actually is knowledge, proof such as, the human body, for instance, or any other object is made 99.999% of subtle energy. Very, very, very little of it is actual physical energy. It's this remarkable quantum, subatomic particles, the stuff that we call space, but isn't space. It's actually moving and bubbling different kinds of energy. Forever ago, Einstein said, this universe is nothing more than oscillating fields of light and sound. That is all that we are. That is all that we have. Several years ago, scientists showed that an electron could be found at least a football field away from a person's body, and it related to them. And this is kind of the old science. And so these days we have new machines being created with different kinds of light, like far ultraviolet light, which is now available in operating rooms, like over the operating table, and it kills all the bacteria and all the microbes, that are present. You can go out and buy far infrared blankets for, kind of pennies on the dollar compared to what they might have been 10 years ago, to help decrease the pain in your body, and stimulate the movement. We now know, for instance, that in the body, opposing electromagnetic forces or opposing different kinds of energy, when they meet in the body, they form Mobius loops. That's sort of like these eights that double up on each other. And when these are in the body, we have rejuvenating cellular activity. We have healthier mitochondria, which are the, kind of little chug along engines that are in our own cells. So we're finding out so many different things, about what's the nature of energy, and that our nature is really energetic. And almost all energy is not seen. It's still
Absolutely.
hard to measure. We can't measure it now. We're just starting to measure it.
Absolutely. It's funny, with reference to the photon discovery, I wrote a little song which goes to the tune of Frere Jacques. It says, "Where is photon? Where is photon? Here I am, in your body quantum. Anytime you want them, shine away, shine away."
I love that. We also have biophotons. I know you know that, like teenier photons or units of light that come off the DNA and intersect with a greater field of light. My very favorite discovery from a couple of years ago are that the body, every time there's a pressure in the body, like the heartbeats, or the blood is moving through the cavities, produced our phonons. Phonons. These are the subatomic sound particles that go in and through crystal lattices, and they form, kind of like matrices that are crystalline. And if you're holding, for instance, positive beliefs, we already know for 20, 30 years this works. Positive beliefs like in your heart, in mind, these phonons will spread those positive beliefs through your organs, through your blood, through your lymph tissue. And literally, you're just flooding yourself with positive knowledge, positive truths, and you're going to be healthier on an organic and emotional level too.
Absolutely. In Advanced Chakra Healing, you shared the 4 different pathways. How may listeners and readers determine which one of these pathways to start with?
Well, on a simplistic basis, elemental is very physical and, kind of like the substances that make the physical and make us smile. The power has to do with forces. The imaginal is different worlds and mystical. And the divine, is that in, which we're, kind of working with the divine presence. So, usually I just suggest to somebody, kind of pay attention to your intuition. Which one do you feel attracted to if you're focused on a particular issue or need, or even a joy and you want to grow your joy? You can always ask for a sign. I love doing everyday vision quests. Like I'll give myself a day or 3 days and say, I want a sign from the universe. like I'm going to put, a card, kind of on my mirror. And here's the elemental, the power, the imaginal, the divine. I want a sign that clearly shows me which one to really focus in on for that particular issue. And you know what? You can just pick one. It doesn't matter. The advice I would give, though, is if you've been really focused on the everyday pathway, the elemental, you've been going to therapy, changing your diet, looking at addictive practices, working with elements, going to various holistic and allopathic doctors, and something's not budging, go up a level. Then work with the power pathway. What's stuck there? If you've been working with the power and nothing's budging, go up a level. So you're safe on every level, but those are a few clues that I would provide.
And she provides them in her new book, Advanced Chakra Healing. My guest, Cyndi Dale, will be back with more after these words on the OMTimes radio network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute? When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can. But it's just as important to take time for yourself. AARP can help. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
We've all felt left out. And for people who move to this country, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Cyndi Dale, her new book, Advanced Chakra Healing, 4 Pathways to Energetic Wellness and Transformation. Cyndi, let's talk about some specific healing approaches. It goes without saying that the events that have unfolded since early 2020 have been life-altering for all of us and traumatic for many. How may we use the energy of empathy to heal trauma?
Well, we're not going to heal from trauma unless we apply empathy to ourselves and or we have somebody else kind of giving us an empathic ear and compassionate presence. Because trauma is stress that does not release from the physical body, or our psychological self, and even from the subtle body. So it's basically stress that gets stuck. And when we go through trauma, part of us sort of forms, kind of like a little protective bubble inside of ourselves, until we get to a safer place and we can feel the feelings of what happened. We can process it. We can go get help. We can get caring and give it to ourselves. So the key in releasing ourselves from trauma we're holding inside, and or to help somebody else to do that is empathy. I mean, think about it. I'm sure the kids do this. Most parents do. I mean, both my boys, when they would get hurt on the playground in elementary school, they would wait to cry until they got home. And that the knee didn't hurt anymore. But they weren't really going to get on with it until they got their good cry, or until they could scream about that nasty bully that, kind of threw something at them, or talk about the experience in one way or another. And my job wasn't really the Band-Aid at that point, or the, ibuprofen or whatever it is that, that the tea tree oil or arnica cream or whatever it might be that was needed. My job was to care with empathy, to care compassionately, and to feel with them what they're going through, not to feel it instead of them, but to feel it with them so that they knew that they were understood. And in that way, that playground experience did not turn into a trauma, because it got understood and it got cleansed and it got healed. So I think empathy is the key. If we don't know somebody who can give it to us, we can give it to ourselves. It's really important to know that we are here to receive from others and also to give to ourselves, and can be compassionate, toward, wow, yeah, I can see, like, when I used to get drunk all the time, I really understand why I did that. I can really, kind of care for that self who had that problem. And by doing that, we really help work ourselves through the traumas that led to something like an addiction, if you would, and the trauma that we created, undergoing that way to try to fix a problem.
What would you offer folks who are experiencing pandemic-related burnout?
It's a big deal. So there's many reasons for pandemic related burnout. And I mean, I've had it because my business got busier. Like, I got actually even busier. So, I had to be really practical and set some boundaries, kind of reduce, my work hours, make sure I took this time off or took that time off. So some of it's really practical. Some of it, though, the burnout people are experiencing are maybe because they too are overworking, but in really critical, scary conditions. At a hospital, you're frontline, you're an essential worker, you're delivering all those packages that show up at Cyndi Dale's door, and have been for 2 years or whatever it is. So for that kind of a burnout, again, pace yourself, brace yourself, look at if you need to actually make a change career-wise, but you've got to care for yourself with diet, with sleep. That's elemental pathway. You've got to do what's practical. Make sure you do for your body and your emotions and your own heart and soul what you need to, and make a change if you need to. The other burnout, though, is a lot of us are absorbing other people's feelings.
Yeah. Especially fear.
So much fear, so much anxiety. I'm in Minneapolis, and so during that early stage of the lockdown, we also had a lot of racial riots, which we needed to have. But it was really scary here. At one point I packed the car because I didn't know, if I was going to have to drive off, either. And so there's a lot of anger out there. There's a lot of displaced people. There's people without jobs. You might be one of those people with financial fear, and you have a reason for it. So we have to be practical. What do we need to do to take care of the everyday, the body, the people we love? How do we set up a schedule? How do we sleep? How do we eat healthy? And how do we do energetic boundaries so we don't become what's toxic out there?
And as you shared, so many have faced financial challenges, including the loss of jobs since the pandemic ensued. How may we use chakra healing to face our financial challenges and move back into prosperity?
Loss of jobs, or disenfranchisement with the job you have and you're burned out in it, loss of a place to live, increased homelessness. It's, children without food. It's very, very frightening, and it's very, very scary. So, there's a lot of different ways to come at, kind of bettering ourselves financially with the chakras. However, the bottom line is you're going to want to work with the first chakra. No matter what, that first chakra is about our fundamental needs. It's in the hip area. It's red. That chakra develops when we're in the womb to 6 months. So first of all, spend some time meditating. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, a few minutes. I mean, because sometimes when we're scared, it's hard to slow ourselves down. I get it, right? And go, what money issues did I inherit from my mom? What financial issues did I inherit from my dad? With compassion, work those through. Kind of decide what you want to keep and what you want to let go of. That's the most fundamental way to open up that first chakra in the hip area, the red chakra, to start letting money come in or getting guidance about where you can be and what you need to do to increase or better yourself. Through that chakra, also ask for help. I mean, invisible help. Ask for a guide who can speak to you, who can give you dreams, who can show you, who can give you opportunities. I mean, so much of the time we think that there's a veil between the worlds. You know what that veil is? It's us. We're the veil. If we don't believe that there's help, or we think it's foolish to believe that there's really angels or beings or deceased ancestors who can help us, unconsciously we've put up boundaries, and so they're not helping us. So just decide, I want whatever it is I call God to send helpers to help me. And you'll get help, you'll get dreams, you'll get people coming into your life that you're going to step back and go, I'm only meeting that person because there's some kind of divine helper, spirit ally that lined that up at this moment and this day. I stay open to help people. A couple years ago during the lockdown, I actually had my voice, right, say to me, go to the store. And I'm like, I don't want to go to the store. And it's like, go to the store. I get in the store and I'm driving and there's a family, at the, kind of near the store, 5 or 6 members of a family, very nice looking people. They're holding a sign. He's out of work. I went in, I bought groceries, I gave it to them. And in a very safe way, I lined him up with a cleaning job. So he had a job. Now, that doesn't make me, like extra special. It makes me part of the web of hearts that's here. And if we get in touch with our own spirit and spirit allies, oftentimes we also are put in touch with humans who can help us and we can help too.
Absolutely. And those synchronicities are there when we open up our heart chakras and listen to that inner voice, which will guide us to be of service and help to others. And to quote the words from the Moody Blues, when you stop and think about it, you won't believe it's true that all the love you've been giving has all been meant for you. Don't forget to give that love to your own heart chakra.
That's beautiful. It's where it starts, that's where it ends, and that's where we dwell.
My guest, Cyndi Dale, her new book, huge book, 800 plus pages, Advanced Chakra Healing, 4 Pathways to Energetic Wellness and Transformation. And don't worry about picking it up. You can pick it up. You have the strength.
It's good exercise.
Absolutely. Cyndi, one more time, please tell our listeners where they can get the book and find out more about you.
CyndiDale.com, CYNDIDALE.com. There's a link there, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or order it from your indie bookstore.
Absolutely. Cyndi, thank you so much for joining us again and sharing this very positive message that everyone needs to hear.
It's a message of love. And thank you, Victor, for continually bringing that to all of us.
Thank you, Cyndi. And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.